Welcome all to this week's Realism Tips. This week we're going to be focusing on herbivores, especially with how they interact with others and herding behaviors in general. Okay, so our first tip is going to be how to interact with the world around you as a solo herbivore when you're used to being in groups. So there's a couple of different ways that you can take that depending on your dinosaur's personality. You might either be more timid because you don't have any friends around you. When there's less herbivores around, that means there's less eyes to look out for danger, so you might find yourself pausing to look around more. Make sure that nobody's trying to sneak up on you and trying to use you as the next snack. Or you could be a bit more bold and be a bit more aggressive in how you're looking for friends. So instead of trying to be quiet and looking around, you might be calling out more often in the hopes that a friend could hear you, but also bearing in mind that that might draw predators into your location. Herbivores in general are going to be more loud and a bit more inclined to try and communicate with one another, because whenever they do lose their herd, they're going to try and find their herd. Their herd is their number one defense mechanism, so it's going to be in their best interest to try to look for their herd. Kentros in particular are very social herbivores, and they'll spend a lot of their time migrating together and bonding. Kentros will also form one particularly strong bond with one other of their kind, with whom they will share a very close bond with, and they can often be seen cuddling up against each other by facing each other so as not to hit each other with their spikes. Kentros will also give each other a pretty wide berth for the same reason. They'll also give other objects around them a pretty wide berth so as not to get stuck up against a tree or up against a bush or rock or anything like that with their spines. Kentros in particular are a very social species, and so they will interact with one another in such a way that will not harm one another, but will still show that they care. So whenever I wake up here, I might decide that, you know what, it's going to be time to interact with my friend, so I'll just come over and I'll nuzzle at their head. I can either do this by tilting my mouse, even just the emote key could kind of get around that, calling to them, and otherwise just trying to indicate that I am trying to befriend them and I'm not trying to hurt them with my spikes. So when you're sleeping, be it at night for a diurnal dinosaur or during the day for a nocturnal dinosaur, that doesn't mean you don't have to attend to other needs that you may have, such as food or water needs. You can still attend to those to the best of your ability, even outside of schedule, but the main priority should be for resting and for regaining your energy. That way you do have enough energy should something be a threat to you, and that way you can still interact with the world around you. So that EO over there, its movement, since it's big, might wake me up, or it might not, depending on how live a sleeper you want to roleplay your dinosaur as being. But you shouldn't necessarily wake up to every little thing, and you shouldn't necessarily ignore every small thing either. If something's getting too close, you're more likely to wake up, whereas if something big is skulking off in the distance, you might not necessarily notice it either. And just because it's out of my schedule does not mean that I cannot be alert. So because I got up to go get some food, I noticed that there's a spino over there. So being a herbivore and having that be any form of a carnivore, I'm going to naturally be a bit more leery about having something that big and scary near me. So I'm going to check it out, try to ascertain if it's actually a threat and what might happen. And I can move away if need be, or I can approach it if I don't think it's a threat at all. Seeing a spino, I'm going to assume that that is going to be a threat, and I'm going to try to stay away, or at least maintain some distance from it. So one excellent tip that we had for realism was going to be whenever you approach the water, especially as a herbivore that is going to be potentially a bit more vulnerable than a predator would be, it's going to be best to take a look around to make sure that there's nobody that's going to be a potential threat coming up to you before you go ahead and bend your neck down to drink. That way you're not going to get ambushed from the water or from behind while you're doing so. I did see that there was a Suko behind me, but I did not think that that was enough of a threat to not put myself in this vulnerable position. So whenever you are migrating as an herbivore, you're going to especially want to conserve your energy in case you ever need it for a predator or for anything else. So for the most part, you're going to be walking to wherever you need to go. There are going to be occasions that it's going to call for running, especially again if you see a predator or any other threat. But for the most part, even if you're hungry, even if there's a quest, even if there's a time limit, you're just going to be walking to where you need to go.